Yeah, welcome to Efficient Brewing. If you've been watching our previous videos and following the process on setting up your brewery and producing a schedule, you would have created your brewery setup over on the left here. And then the next step would have been adding your beers, which we have now in our right-hand panel here. So the next part is to create a brew plan. So brew plan or orders, this is the beers that you want to produce within the next period. So that could be whatever time frame that you would like. The amount of beers that you put in here is dependent on how long it's going to take. Okay, so we go over here to the update, and so on the update then we go to the brew plan, and we always have to select the start date whenever we go to the update. And so the reason is because we can actually set a date that is in the past or in the future, or just exactly right now, which is today. So we can actually pick a date to be able to set our start date for the scheduling component. And so if we set it in the past, it means we can update the schedule that we have already produced. If we've set it in the future, it means that we might already have some beers already in the schedule, and then we actually just want to add to the end of that. And so we don't want to change the things that we've already done or already scheduled. We just want to change. We want to add to the end of that schedule. So we're going to select today as the start date. And so we hit enter. And so now we have a brew plan that is completely empty. So there is a bunch of headings here which will get populated in time, but I'll just talk about a few of these. So scheduled start was actually if the beer has actually been scheduled. So you've done this process and you've actually produced a schedule, and it tells you when it's actually scheduled to start in the brew kit. Then the brew ID is just an ID that we use to identify that beer. And so that can be just part of your brewery management system to be able to track the beer types or the beer that you've been producing. This is the beer types. So the things that we've added when we were over here in this beers menu, they are the types that we use. So the broad names that we're using for that. The size, and so the size is important because that will tell you whether it can go into particular vessels or not. If you have a brewery that has multiple sizes for your different sizes for your fermentation vessels and conditioning vessels, then if you pick a size for the beer batch that is too big for any of your equipment, then it won't be scheduled. So then if you have if you have some that it's too big for some equipment but not just the right size for other, it won't go into the smaller vessels. And these last two are things that don't need to be used, but you can use them. So due date. So when do you need the beer to be finished fermenting by? So that is if you have some orders that need to be completed, you'll have a due date. And the last one is the start date. So would you like to start making this beer? So that is that could be something that you decide, okay, well, actually I don't need to make a lager this week. I should make it in 2 weeks' time. And so you might set a start date for that. Okay, so let's now start. So we've got our beer types, so IPA, Pale Ale, Pilsner, and Lager. So let's just start with an IPA. And so we're going to create an IPA. I'm going to make everything 60 hectolitres just to make it straightforward for our brewing schedule. And then also all our equipment is 60 hectolitres anyway. So that wouldn't make any sense to have anything smaller or bigger than that. And I'm not going to bother putting anything into the due date or start date. You can select times for that if you want, and it doesn't make any difference to your input or what's happened here. It does make a difference to the schedule, but that is something that you might want to consider. Okay, so I'll add a few beer types or making a plan that I want to do. So I want to make an IPA. I would also like to make a Pale Ale. And so the brew ID is being populated with some shortening. And so it's actually the first 4 letters of the name, and then some ID. So because IPA was the first one, and then it actually just increments it to 2. So you can actually set this to anything you want. And so I'm just going to keep it with the defaults. And so I'll give an example in just a moment. So let's say I wanted to make another IPA, and I actually wanted to call this IPA Special. And so we keep the identifier as number 3, but it's just got a different, I need to put in a volume. I forgot to do that. So there we go. That's excellent. So now we have IPA 1, Pale Ale 2, and IPA Special 3. So this is a unique ID to be able to identify your beer. So now I want to add a Pilsner. So Pilsner, again, 60 hectolitres. We'll also add a lager. And so I'm going to add a few more beers and then we'll come back and we can finish and we can talk about the brew plan. Okay, so I've now completed the brew plan. So I've now got our brew ID here. So we've got now 9 beers that are in our plan. And so nothing's been scheduled. So as I said, there's nothing in the scheduled start column. I didn't add any due dates. I didn't have any start dates. So all I've got is the ID, the beer type, and then the size. And so these are the beers that I would like to produce from today for until however long it takes in order to produce all of these beers within our fermentation vessels. So we can add as many as we want. I'll leave it at 9. Now, as we do with everything in Efficient Brewing, once we do that, we need to also hit Save Changes, and that saves this brew plan so that when we go to building the schedule, it is available for us. So if we clicked Home, it will also warn us that we haven't saved everything. And same as with the beer setup, if we actually decided that we actually got something wrong here and we wanted to change some of these items, we can actually, using the ID on the left, we can actually select one of these. So number 5, which is the lager, we actually may want to change the ID, or we could even want to remove it completely because we may actually decide we don't want that one at all. So let's just remove that one now. And I might instead add a lager to the end. So this is the way that you can set up your brew plan. You can modify this brew plan as much as you want, even after something's been scheduled. Okay, so the next step after this would be actually creating the schedule. But we'll leave that for the next video and we can talk about that a little bit more. Thank you.